Tak, taki jest plan.
To nie słyszałam.
لا
Fantastic.
Hello. I'm trying to talk. I know, I'm a bit close. Again, is that okay? Great, let's begin. Welcome back. And yes, we will start with a few words from Kasia again, telling us more about Polonium Foundation and Polonium Network.
Thanks, Agnieszka. Hi, everyone. Hello again. As promised this morning, I will tell you a bit more about our organization. So, we, as I already mentioned this morning, but maybe not everyone was here, the Polonium Foundation is a sort of bottom-up initiative created by the research community for the research community. And our aim is to bring together people at different stages of their career, students, researchers, senior researchers, and people interested in science and in the research world. A lot of our audience is of Polish background, or are Polish researchers abroad in different countries across the world, but we also interact and work with researchers interested in science research opportunities in Poland, for example, and everyone who is interested and who overlaps with that. So everyone is welcome to our activities and events like today. So through our activities, we aim to connect people, we aim to foster collaboration and exchange of ideas and experiences, as well as build a sort of culture of support. And our motto is turning brain drain into brain circulation, which in case of Poland, it means the one-dimensional exodus of Polish researchers abroad. We aim for it to be a more multi-dimensional dynamic that is more beneficial for everyone. So now I'll tell you a bit more about how did it all start, how it all started. We were brought to life through this spontaneous almost initiative from students in Oxford and Cambridge who in 2012 organized the very first Science Polish Perspectives event. It was a conference in Oxford with about 100 participants, and throughout the years we've been having them annually since then. They kept growing in size, and also we visited different locations. So we had our Science Polish Perspective conferences, not just in the UK, but also in Germany. And then we started doing these smaller Science Polish Perspectives meetups, such as the one today, in different locations. I should also add that in 2012, it was mostly students from biomedical background who have launched this initiative. But with time, we also grew into being involved in many more disciplines. So today we have more technology and areas around that, but we also welcome researchers from humanities, social sciences, and so on. Very interdisciplinary. I should also say, a few years ago we've done some, it's not just events, we have done quite a bit of research on the Polish research scientific diaspora. including in 2018 we published our report, which took about 500 people's opinions and views, so it's the biggest report on Polish Research Diaspora to date. And again, we kept growing in size. We have organized different events, including a series of lectures called From Poland with Science, coordinated by Marta, who is here with us today, where we almost flipped our normal formula. So during Science Polish Perspectives, we invite people who normally study or work abroad to present their research, and then From Poland with Science, we invited Polish researchers living and working in Poland to show off their amazing work abroad, in this case in the UK. And depending on the funding, we'd love to continue that initiative as well. And then it sort of all came to a halt in 2020. We planned to have our first Science Polish Perspectives conference in Zurich, and because of the pandemic it had to be postponed. We did organize it this year, unfortunately still online, but we're also very excited that it was still possible to happen. And through our online activities, we also developed a few different aspects of our work, including a series of webinars. We've also noticed that now that things don't have to be stationary, we have much more presence in the United States, for example. There's interest there. We've launched an important project called the Polonium Network, of which I will talk about in a second, and we continue our research. So recently we've done a survey, for example, about the attitudes among the Polish researchers and students in the UK towards Brexit. So, as I said, our aim is to connect people, and one thing that came out of the big report that I just mentioned is that people, regardless of whether they're thinking of coming back to Poland or they want to stay abroad, they're really interested in continuing being part of the community on their own terms. And through that, we have launched our most recent initiative, which maybe before I jump into more information, I will just give you this little video on how it works. Hopefully it will take us to...
Hi, I'm Iga, and this is the Polonium Network, a place where Polish researchers can find and sustain global research.
Oh no! Let me check. Did I not come out? Do I have to come out of the... Okay. Well, what now? Sorry about that. We did try it in the break and it was working well, but of course. Amazing. Thank you so much, Michał. Alright, now we can Hopefully.
Hi, I'm Iga, and this is the Polonium Network, a place where Polish researchers can find and sustain global research connections. How do you start? To become part of our platform, you first need to register and create a profile. The process is pretty self-explanatory. Fill in a few basic requirements, after which an email with a confirmation link will be sent to you shortly. Your profile is your business card to other users. Utilize its potential to the maximum. Increase your visibility by providing the information about your current position, disciplines you specialize in, your education, as well as grants and funding. Help others find you. Search for new contacts in the Community tab, where you can find other like-minded people based on their interests, education, and even location. Grow your network by reaching out directly to others using our built-in messaging functionality. Looking for new job opportunities? We've got you covered. In the Careers tab, you can browse through offers from the scientific community. Don't worry about missing a deadline. You can have curated job offers specific for your disciplines of interest sent to you as a newsletter. They have all the information you need: the position description, location, required skills, education, and salary. Are you a company or institution that's interested in working with us? No problem. In the Become a Partner tab, you will find information on how to contact us so we can swiftly start the process of bringing you on board. Good networks matter. Take care of yours. Join us at poloniumnetwork.org.
Okay, so that's it. No cancel. Jesus. Cancel. Thank you. Okay, we're back to here. Thank you for your patience. Yes, so we looking into a bit more detail. We have about 400 participants in Polonium Network at the moment. And it's still showing me something else. Okay, let's do it. About 40% of the people who are joined are from Poland, but we also have 15% in the United States, nearly 11% in the United Kingdom, and altogether about 25 different countries. When it comes to the profile of people we have a really nice mix of people at different levels. About 1/3 is PhD students, also undergraduate students, and people who work in the academic or research industry. We have representatives from quite renowned institutions, and an interesting breakdown of different disciplines. So about 40% is life sciences. As I said, we're kind of grounded in biomedical, but we also have people from all sorts of areas. And importantly, we also have job offers. So in total, I think we've had about 70 job offers posted since the portal launched, and more than 10 are active at the moment. And in the presentation, Iga mentions that if you are interested in partnering up with us, I know it sounds really serious, but it literally just means if you know a job offer, if your institute is looking for someone and you think, this could be quite a unique target audience for your offer, you literally just send us an email and say, hey, could you post it on Polonium Network? So I really recommend you consider that. At some point, maybe when we grow in size, there will be a small fee for posting job offers, but at the moment it's all free because we want to grow as much as possible. So all the details are on our website. And similarly, if you're a bit bored of maybe starting another profile, it's really, really simple, and then you don't have to even go back to the portal that often because we send you a monthly newsletter if you sign up for it. So it's really low key, and there's lots of friendly people there too. And if you have any further questions, as I said, the Polonium team is here today about either Polonium Network or anything else. Thank you, and sorry about the technical problems.
No worries at all. Thank you very much, Kasia. We will We will not have a question round for Kasia, but that's because you have a perfect opportunity today, this evening, to meet her at our second networking event that will take place from about 6:30 at a place called Dexter's. Dexter's is a bar, a Jamaican bar, that it's close to the city center. I'll just show you briefly. We don't want to see that Facebook page. I am Nihao. I might need your help again. Or maybe it's the presentation mode that it's still on. Yeah. Great. Dexter's. It's in the city center. There are 4 lakes in the city of Copenhagen, and this is exactly in between, kind of. There are 2 and 2, and this is there, by a little place called Supervio. But address is mentioned. If you want, just ask me after. If you have any doubts how to get there, I'll be there from around 6:30. We have some tickets for drinks for you, and there will be food served about 6:45. So please come and let's network and let's have a good time. The drinks are phenomenal, just so you know, and music is also good. That's one thing. I want. Tour tomorrow. Tomorrow at 11 o'clock, we will have a tour of Copenhagen guided by Krzysztof. I actually do not know where is the meeting point. What? To the town hall. It's a Copenhagen town hall, main town hall, with little dragons and a fountain and so on. Yes. So please join. All right, that's done. Now it's time for Enrico. Enrico has earned his PhD recently from DTU. Is that correct?
Yeah.
Yes. And after being in academia, he decided to move to industry, and now he's working in a company called Lithium Balance and SATA Technologies, where he builds algorithms to predict the performance of lithium-ion batteries that are used for vehicles. Yes, in his free time, he loves to go to the gym and to hike volcanoes around the world. I also will say that he is a very accomplished Toastmaster. So today, this will not only be a lesson on numerical models, but also a very enjoyable lesson on how to do public speaking and how to do it well.
Thanks a lot, Agnieszka. And now that I have all this pressure, I don't know what to do, guys. I'm really freaking out. But I thought that now we all had just lunch, so probably the energy level is going down, and I see some people a bit sleepy. So I will start by trying to attempt a magic trick. I bought this device here for you. I guess some of you can recognize it. It's a rudimental pendulum. I built it this morning, so it's not so effective, but it works. The magician generally tried to hypnotize one person in the audience. But I'm altruist, so I will hypnotize all of you. I'm not making discrimination. So as the drill works, just watch it very carefully, okay? Okay, I think we succeeded. I see some people down there sleeping a little bit. The goal was reached, and except for jokes, I was checking the other day about history of pendulum. And it turns out this device is actually really, really cool. Did you know that until around 100 years ago, the pendulum was the most accurate way to measure time? All the clocks were based on the pendulum. If we didn't know how it worked, we couldn't measure time. You would be late for work. You didn't know where to go to sleep. But we had this device. So the question is, how do we use this device to track time? Well, they had a numerical model. And what is a numerical model? Essentially, I like to describe a numerical model like a set of equations that describe how things work. For example, how much time it will take for the one swing of my pendulum. Now, you can have different kind of numerical models. You can have some models that are based on physics laws, like the gravity law from Newton. And that's generally what we call physics-based models. Those are generally the most used in the past. And now in recent time, we have been developing data-driven models. So those models in which we collect a lot of measurements, we swing this pendulum a lot of times, longer pendulums, smaller pendulums, and then by means of statistical approach, we create some function to describe how the pendulum will perform, right? So as Agnieszka said, I've been in the last years building a lot of models. I try to describe the performance of most of these devices, starting with some sort of rotary expander there, big engines for ship, then I was solar power plants, refrigeration system for supermarkets, power plants for ships, and then biogas plants where you would just take residual from farming or animals and then make gas. And recently I started working with lithium-ion batteries. So here I try to understand how do we know when the car will stop? When do we need to recharge the battery? And it's actually very complicated. When I accepted the job, I thought it would be easy. I modeled all these other 5 things, but actually it was very bad. Anyway, as my background is not really into bioscience, and I guess your background is not into these technologies, I thought to bring my level down and to try to share some of my knowledge in a way that everyone can benefit about it. So before doing that, it's also important to understand why do we build numerical models? Because if there's no reason to build a model, then why should we discuss about how to build the models, right? So why do we do that? Well, whenever you want to build something in real life, it's very expensive to build it. Imagine you want to build a bridge. You build a bridge, it fails. First, you don't want to kill people, right? And secondly, it's quite expensive to build a bridge. So it makes good sense to have a set of laws, equation that you can estimate, okay, how thick should the bridge be made? What material should I use? So that I don't make things collapse. And that's one of the main reasons, or the first reason to develop a model, a numerical model, to support these decision makers, an engineer and designer, to define how things should be built so that they work and they fulfill the requirement for which they make them. The second reason is to provide diagnostics. Like if the bridge collapses and we have to build a new one, it's not like we just make it the same. We want to understand why it failed. So we carry out some study with our models to understand what was the problem and how can improve in the next time. And lastly, we also develop models for forecasting, understanding what will happen in the future. If our bridge is there and suddenly we see a crack, does our knowledge about the bridge today change because we have the crack? Should we change our estimation? And that's something we can do with numerical models. So I was building different kind of numerical models. Sometimes I did good models, sometimes I did bad models. Sometimes I made horrible models. And all of us probably did horrible models sometimes. And so I gathered 3 main points that I want to share today. Kind of rule of thumbs that I call like that. Thing that, from my point of view, each one of us, when we build numerical model, we should keep in mind. They're not written in stone. Sometimes maybe they don't work in your field. But probably something you can think about. So let's start with the first one. The first one is very simple. Don't be flashed by buzzwords and complexity. Look at the essential. Now, if I look at myself, guys, I'm a nerd. And when I look at you, I also see other nerds in the audience. And one thing we have is that when we are a nerd, I love to be a nerd. I'm not shy about it. That we like complexity. We like to dig into the little details. So I was doing my PhD about recovering energy on board ships. And well, I had that model that my colleague gave to me. It was beautiful. But I wanted to make it more complex. I add more details, more details, more details. And the results, well, they would change by 0.2%. I still felt happy because, yeah, that's my contribution. But sometimes when you dig too much, you end up into the rabbit hole, and that's not so good to be there. You're alone, and nobody really values what you do because it's useless. So, some year ago, then 1 month ago, I found this tweet. And now I bring it with me every time that I build a numerical model. I can't read it, it's too complicated. Please read it yourselves. What essentially it says is that when you have to build a complex model, or you have given a task in numerical modeling, and you have an overinflated ego, like I have, because I want to do something fancy, then you should do something very nerdy and make it in your CV, because you're happy, you know, you did something very complicated that makes you feel good. But then when you deploy the model, you give it to someone else, make something simpler. They can use it, they can understand it, and it's fast. So whenever you build a model, please consider, you like something complicated, I love something complicated, maybe that's not what is required. Moving on to the second lesson. This one is a lesson I learned with the pain. It was very hard. And it's pretty simple. Don't do what you want, do what is needed. So roughly 4 years ago, background story, I am a yes man. So I have this problem, now I'm changing it. So these friends came to me and said, Rico, simple. We have a startup, we want you in the company. Of course I said yes, I didn't even know what the company was about. And, you know, from that day I was an entrepreneur, guys. I thought I would make a lot of money, and the equation was there. 3 smart guys, just to give a background, 2 PhD students and 1 data scientist. 5 years of experience for the data scientist. And the topic was pretty simple. So we were working in anaerobic digestion. You have this big tanks there, and you put rubbish in there, and there are some little bacteria, they eat the rubbish and they make biogas. So we did what was the homework. We looked into the market, what was there. And that's what they had. They had Excel. It was beautiful. So what we tried to do is like, okay, these guys try to understand how much biogas they will make tomorrow with an Excel sheet. Of course, we built a machine learning pipeline. It's going to be so much better. We built a machine learning pipeline, and we were so much better. Like these guys had an accuracy of plus minus 30%. We were plus minus 10%, and we built the model in 1 week. It took us 2 months to look at the data, but then the model was very fast. So we were there with this commercial partner, we show our slide deck, and they just say, this is useless. We don't care. I mean, if we have 200 kilo, it's not like we can choose to put 220, we have 200. We cannot change the feed. What we want to know is what happens if tomorrow they want to give us some waste from a winery, can we put it, or is it going to blow up? And your model cannot tell us this answer. So our model was useless. And well, our pocket was empty. 2 years of development, and what we learned is that, well, you can have the best model. You can have the greatest mind. But yeah, you should also consider what people want on the other side. And we were blind. As I said, we were doing what we liked. And we really liked it. We did it for 2 years, every Saturday for 5 hours. And well, I still enjoy the experience. I bring it as part of my background. But the pocket's empty. So I would have been happy doing something simpler and bringing me the money, right? And now we go for lesson number 3, which is going forward, is the last one. So my speech is going to be a bit slower. And it's do not always follow the rules. Dare to challenge the status quo. I guess many of you know this animal. In Italy we have a saying that, well, this is not the smartest animal in the animal kingdom. And it's not because the sheep in itself is a dumb animal. I think they are fairly smart. The fact is that when you put all the sheep together, well, if the first sheep is dumb, and this sheep goes into a hole, all the other one will just follow it, blindly. And that's something that sometimes we do. People say that we are the average of the 5 people we spend the most time with, right? And this also is relevant when we are working in a team or in a department or in a group. I could feel it myself. When I was doing a PhD student, my PhD, so I was working in a department, very brilliant mind. We were building physics-based models about this technology for ships, as I mentioned before. The vessels, not the animals, just to be clear. And so we were building it for complexity, increasing all the features. And of course, as I joined freshly, my task was to make it more complex. And that's so I did. I was very happy. So I published my first paper. To get the result, just to get one plot, it took me 2 weeks of simulation in supercomputer. I was quite frustrated about it, to be honest. And then, we were giving these presentations to our technical partners in the companies, and they would just come, look at us, listen, sleep, ask one question, and go home. So I wondered, okay, I'm here to change the world. I'm not here to make a plot. What is the problem with us? And I thought, okay, if we want to design this technology, and that's what I was aiming to do, how can we provide the world with a software that for one single vessel, you need to run the optimization for 5 hours with 29 variables to be optimized, and I need a supercomputer with 35 processors. That doesn't seem very useful. So I thought about it for a little bit, and then I went to my advisor and I said, okay, there are these things called data-driven models. I think I want to simplify what we do and make a tool maybe simpler, but will give us faster results. We had a quite heated conversation about it. Well, at the end, the result was, you can do it in your free time. And so I did. So I did this model in the free time. It was very simple, just a linear regression. I did it in Excel. But I could reach essentially the same accuracy, plus minus 10% in 2 seconds instead of 5 hours. So we called the industry for the regular meetup. I present all the normal things, and at some point I was, okay, now I'll present a little bit about the data-driven models. These guys woke up. They came out of their sleeping situation, and they started to ask questions. And at the end, they just say, okay, just share this model. I think this is useful for us. Small victory for me, right? So what I take home of this is the simple, just be okay being the green apple. You don't have to be a red one, right? And it's not like what people in my department were doing was wrong. I mean, doing the physics-based model, that's what brings forward the research, and that's what we had to do. It's totally fine. But sometimes you also have to have the courage to look a little bit outside, what people in other groups, what people in other countries are doing. Whenever you define the architecture of your models or of your path of research, you have good reason to do that. And I'm sure that everybody who makes a decision in terms of whatever direction they're going, they're taking the best they can in the condition where they are. But over time, the situation changes, and it could be also good to consider detours. So be ready to change sometimes. It can be painful, it can be wrong direction. But if you don't, you never know. So this was more or less my journey in numerical models. And I have for you just 3 take-home lessons that I'd like to remind to all of you. The first one is, don't be flashed by buzzwords and complexity. Look at the essentials. Do only the level of complexity which is required and not the one you like. The second one is, don't do what you want. Do what is needed. Every time I have to build something, I ask, okay, who is using this code? Do they need to understand it or not? And lastly, do not always follow the rules. Dare to challenge the status quo. Now, I hope you brought something home. This is my contact. If you want to reach out to me and talk about batteries, that's what I do every day. That's my commercial email, let's say. If you want to talk about numerical models, there's also my LinkedIn profile. And you can connect to me. I'm very happy to expand network and discuss possibilities for collaboration, nerding things. Except for this, the talk is over, and I guess there is time for some questions, if any of you have some.
Thank you so much, Enrico. Questions? Please. I have a question. Did you include that work on the data-driven model when you were defending your PhD?
Of course, I published 2 papers.
On that?
Yes.
Simple model? Oh.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. Very interesting approach. But I'm just curious now, you mentioned, okay, do what is needed, not do what you want. And it doesn't really fit into your third point, kind of, because like, at the end, you should actually do what you want and not is what's really what is needed, because then you're not really outlier, yeah? I mean.
Okay, I understand the question. I think if you look at it from, let's say, philosophical point of view, it's important to do what is needed, and then the way you do it, you choose. I think that whenever you work in a group, sometimes you are pushed to do and follow the procedure that are done before you, and those are not necessarily the best one, but the goal should be the same, if that answered your questions. Okay.
Any more questions to Enrico? Thank you very much, Enrico.
Thanks to all of you.
Who knows how to?
I don't have a good track, but I think it's opened in the browser instead of this PDF open. It's
I see.
open with
I
Adobe.
see.
And then there's presentation.
I'll introduce Małgorzata Bogdan now. Małgorzata is a highly accomplished professional in field of statistics, of large data, multiple testing, model selection, regularization, and statistical genetics. And she's a professor at the Faculty of Mathematics and Computer Science, University of Wrocław, and she's a guest professor at the University of Lund. She obtained her PhD in mathematics from Wrocław University of Science and Technology, and I got a lot of information about Małgorzata, and I could spend a long time to brag about her achievements, but I think it would be best if we heard it from her and heard what she has to say about modern statistics.
Thank you very much for a kind introduction. And I'm sorry that my slides are going to be not so colorful as what we have seen a moment ago. So I basically want to give you an overview on what we are doing, how we are working now. So I am a statistician. And also a little bit overview. You will see, I will browse through some papers. You will see people with whom I collaborate. So this is basically like the plan for the talk for now. Okay, so I'm working in the statistics of large data. So what you can see in here is a database. Probably everybody has seen a database. Okay, so we have some records here. They usually correspond to individual. And we have many variables. So the data which we collect. So this is a database, like a classical database which you would see like in a firm. And here's the database with which I usually work. This is a genetic database. Here you see number 0, 1, or 2. Each column here corresponds to a SNP, or single nucleotide polymorphism. That is like a genetic marker. And each of these values corresponds to the genotype. So usually SNPs have just 2 genotypes. I'm going to go through this a little bit more later. And we collect the data on let's say, up to 2 million SNPs. And we want to learn some information based on this data. So what we can, what would be the application of such a database for us? So we might try to identify variables which are associated to some characteristics. Sometimes the goal is to find a causal feature which influences some trait, like blood pressure, for example. We want to predict sometimes some important characteristics using large data sets. For example, we might want to predict the response to the therapy based on clinical and genetic data. So this is going in the direction of personalized therapies. And let's say from the statistical point of view, these are two different goals. So very often when you want to look for a causal feature, you use different methods than when you want to obtain a good prediction accuracy. So for good prediction accuracy, it sometimes is not so important if you include some false predictors, which are maybe correlated with true ones. It's more important when you really include true predictors, then you basically lose more by excluding important predictors than by including some which are maybe not so important. So these are two different goals. And also sometimes we have what we call unsupervised learning, where you don't have a variable of interest, you simply have a database, and you want to find relationships between variables in such a database, which we often represent in terms of graphs, or basically we can do clustering. Okay, so this is what we do in statistics. And what do we mean by large data sets? Okay, well, that's not so entirely clear. So in statistics, there are two numbers, n and p, and they always denote the same. So n is the number of records which we have in the database, and the p is the number of columns. So the database, for me, is a matrix. So I usually send my students to get the true data and work a little bit on it to represent it in terms of a matrix. So we have a matrix with n rows and p columns. And now, very often, what we see large data is often that we have many, many records. So we have, we basically, let's say, have data on millions of individuals. This is the type of the data which Google has. And if you have such a long database, when the number of records is much larger than the number of variables, you can do many things. You can feed complicated nonlinear relationships. Deep learning works in some cases here, particularly when the signal-to-noise ratio is high. But what we are mainly interested in, like in my group, are what we call path databases. So such databases where you have more columns than rows. So you have more variables. And what we then have to deal with when we fit a statistical model is a curse of dimensionality. So usually the methods which I developed in my teams are called the methods for dimensionality reduction. We want to basically find a low-dimensional structure which can describe these data sets. So basically, what is the problem with the curse of dimensionality? When you have too many parameters of your model, like corresponding to the talk of Enrico, okay? If the model is overcomplicated, even when you have a true model, really true model, but you have many parameters which you don't know when you have to estimate them based on the data, if you estimate too many parameters corresponding to the sample size, you are going to have a large variance, we call it. Not very good accuracy for estimating individual parameters. And for the purpose of prediction, this model might be much worse than an approximate model, which actually keeps essentials, which you can estimate well, and you can get a much better prediction using an oversimplified models, but these essentials can be well estimated because we have enough observations to do this. So we have increased variability of estimators, and we have a problem in distinguishing true patterns from the random fluctuations. Like in large database, when you collect many, many, many data, you look for patterns, you are going to see many, just due to random fluctuations. So the goal of our work is to design statistical methods which would basically distinguish the true patterns from these random fluctuations. Okay, so as I said already, if we have two overcomplicated models, very often the prediction properties are actually deteriorated. Okay, so what I mean by dimensionality reduction? Well, there are many ways of doing this. One of the ways is simply to eliminate non-important predictors, edges in the networks, or we can basically identify low-dimensional structures. Many of you probably know principal components analysis. So people are still working in this direction using nonlinear methods of dimensionality reduction. So these are the things on which we work on, and there is a very active research in these directions. For this talk, I'm going to basically concentrate on this first task, on eliminating non-important predictors. Okay, another thing, like what is important? Like in this high-dimensional world, where we have more parameters than the number of observations, basically there are no uniformly the best solutions. We really need to use the expert knowledge to decide which method would be the most beneficial. So, like I do applications in many fields, mainly in genetics, and even in genetics, when we identify genes influencing the trait, there are different techniques for the situation when we believe that there are really very few genes, and different methods you should use when you believe that there is like a polygenic component, that the specific trait is influenced by many, many, many genes. So basically, the prior expert knowledge is very important, like in every specific application. Okay, so how do we work? So in our work, there is a very important theoretical mathematical component. So we basically work in developing new tools which we analyze theoretically and empirically. So good mathematical theorem is the thing which is very good for career of young statisticians. And also, if you write a good theorem, you can very often catch qualitative phenomena which describe specific methods. And also, sometimes you get very good quantitative description. But we also do a lot of empirical analysis, like computer simulations, because very often we basically check if our theoretical results describe well given methodology when the assumptions are not satisfied. So this is what you can test by simulations. For some complicated methods, before the theoretical tools are developed, it takes some time. So people mainly analyze them using simulations. Okay, and another thing which you need to do, okay, so we develop methods. I'm going to show you what is a method. Method is basically written in terms of a mathematical equation. Okay, do this, optimize this. Now the question, how to do this? So we have to develop algorithms which do this in a finite amount of time, which are efficient. So our teams, statistical teams, are often interdisciplinary. They consist only of statisticians, but in different fields, like optimization, algorithms, more asymptotic theory, and also statisticians who work in specific applications. Okay, so let me just start. I guess I still have like 10 minutes. So let me just start to talk about this application which I worked most in recent years. This is like genome-wide association studies. So there was this question about viruses, which are the same for all of us. Well, basically most of the genome is the same for all of us. Because in this theory, basically we assume that we come from one mother, one father. So our species is relatively young. So there are basically most of the genome is the same for all individuals, but still this small percentage of the genome, there are many single nucleotide polymorphisms. So we usually work with databases when we have about 2 million of them. So single nucleotide polymorphism is a polymorphism which relies on the change in just a single base. And for most of these polymorphisms, there are just 3 genotypes possible. So we have homozygotes, and we have a heterozygote, okay? And now main purpose is finding the mutations in DNA sequence that influence a trait of interest. So we have some quantitative traits like blood pressure, cholesterol level, gene expression level. We have a vector of trait values. So we collect values of a trait. And we have this matrix of SNP genotypes. And again, this is a situation when we have much more of these genotypes than the number of individuals which we have to analyze, for which we have a data. Okay, so I start maybe from the first thing which we developed. So this is a paper which I wrote with my colleagues from Purdue University. So Rebecca Dorsch is a statistical genetist, and she's currently the dean of the School of Science at Carnegie Mellon University. And Jayanta Ghosh was absolutely great theoretical statistician. So he unfortunately passed away like 2 years ago. So we developed a method for this gene identification, which we call modified version of Bayesian information criterion. And this was done in 2004. And at this period of time, people did not really realize that in case when you have many, many variables in your database, classical model selection criteria have to be modified. So for this specific situation, we use a very simple multiple regression model. So you basically model your response as your trait as a linear combination of, so each SNP influences the response in a linear fashion. And now, what you do when you fit the multiple regression, you minimize sum of squares of residuals. So this is what we call a loss function. Loss function tells you how well your model fit to the data. And in case when you fit the regression model, this is simply like sum of squares of differences between what you observe in the data and how your model predicts its value. Okay, so we have like the regular least squares regression. Maybe many of you have heard about it. This tool does not apply at all for deciding which variables should be kept in your database. Because in your model. Because whenever you add a variable to your model, the residual sum of squares goes down, even if this variable is completely not important. And another thing is you cannot fit the model by the least squares in case when the number of variables is larger than the sample size. So what you see in here is what we call a penalty. So penalty is a bit like the prior information. So prior information is, okay, my number of variables is very large, but the true model is sparse. So I have only very few important regressors. So I introduce a penalty for the model complexity. And what you see in here is the criterion which we developed. And what was the innovation? Well, this part. So this part said that if you have a large database, you should have in the penalty the term which depends on the number of variables which you have. The more variables which you have, the more easily some of them might seem to be important, even though they are not. Simply due to multiplicity. We call it the multiplicity problem. You do many tests at the significance level 5%. If I do 1,000 tests at the significant level of 5%, but I have 50 false discoveries. So I have to adjust to the number of comparisons which I make. So my penalty depends on the number of variables in the database. So this is what we currently do. I don't have so much time, so I will maybe briefly tell you. So we try to develop methods like this, which basically eliminate the number of false discoveries. So we introduce some penalty terms or some elements in the method which eliminates false discoveries. Very often you can do it quite precisely using mathematical theory. Another thing is how to do this, so we still have a high power. Okay, so we want to have a method which do not allow false discoveries to appear, and on the other hand, identify important patterns with a large power. So this is MBIC. So we published it in Genetics. So a new statistical method which was published in Genetic journal because we applied it for the localization of genes. Okay, and this is like a very new application of this method. So over the years we developed this methodology, we worked on this criterion, we improved this. And the recent application appeared in Genetic Epidemiology in 2017. So here you see so the first person, the first author of this paper is my PhD student, Piotr Schulz, who wrote a very nice package, which can be used for using model selection criteria in large databases. Florian Fromret is my colleague from the Medical University in Vienna. And Hua Tang is a geneticist from Stanford University, who basically posed a problem. So here we basically worked on identification of genes in admixed population. So this is a popular topic right now. Very often we have migrants, two populations join at some point, start to mix. So we have admixed population. And in such a population, we have two basically bits of data. So you have genotypes, but also we have information about which population a specific part of the genome comes from. Okay, maybe I shouldn't talk too much about it. Let me just tell you that we basically developed a method which allows to combine genotype and ancestry information. Why is the ancestry information here useful? So we believe that what really influences the trait is a genotype. But because genotypes are not very much correlated, if you go through the genotypes for each individual, the correlation is of a very short range, which basically, if I want to control for false discoveries, I have to use like a large penalty. While the information on the ancestry goes more like in blocks. So we have like large chunks of correlated information. So I can use a smaller penalty for this. And so if I have, so here is basically how it looks like. If the sample size is small, I can actually identify important genes much better using, Z is the ancestry information, using the ancestry information. So blue line is the ancestry, red line is the genotype. So when the sample size is small, it's much better to use the ancestry. There's a price for this because ancestry is correlated, so you cannot localize very precisely. You can only say, okay, in this region I have a gene, and the other region I don't. Okay? And if you combine these two data types, you can actually do very, very well. So just, since I have just 2 minutes left, so maybe just briefly to tell you, we have a very new method which relies on the context optimization algorithm. This is the paper which was the most fun for me. So I've been working with people from Stanford University. So, and this is actually to tell you how such a team looks like. So I was a person who had the idea about the method. I went to this guy, Avot, who is great. He works on optimization algorithms, so he implemented the method. Emmanuel Cantes is a great statistician. He works at Stanford. He developed the whole field like compressed sensing. So he was like the boss of this old guys, and he and Weiji Su developed some theoretical results for this paper. And Chiara Sabati is a statistical geneticist. So she basically helped us with data analysis for this paper. So this is a very new method for the looking for important predictors in large databases, which we are working on. And basically just to show you maybe many people. So this is a very nice paper only with young people. So this is my PhD student, Damian, Alexei Gozman, who was a PhD student at Tulane University, and Wei Jisoo was a PhD student at Stanford. And for this article, Damian got a reward at the Eastern North American region of the International Biometric Society. So we were quite a lot in collaboration, also with the Polish diaspora. So this person here is Jarosław Harężlak. He basically graduated from Harvard with his PhD and is currently a professor at Bloomington. And we have a very strong collaboration to the extent that he's actually employed 50% in Wrocław, helped us in developing the data science program, and also helped. So both these guys were working with him. So Damian visited him for a postdoc. Marta Karaś is currently a very successful PhD student at Johns Hopkins in biostatistics. This is the best department in the world. So we work a lot in collaboration and really take a lot of advantage by collaborating with the Polish diaspora. So Jarek is not the only Polish statistician who helps us with developing program in data science. I don't have much time to talk about it, but really I got a lot of help from Polish scientists who work abroad. So thank you. I think it's time to finish.
Thank you so much, Małgorzata. It's great to hear that collaborations among Polish community. Any questions, audience? Actually,
Thank you for the talk. It's very interesting and a bit outside of my area. So, but I have a question touching upon the collaborations, because it's very interesting for me to hear how you establish the collaborations and also how you have so many different applications of the models, which I imagine are so extremely useful that everyone wants a piece of it. And at the same time, you mentioned you have statisticians with different specializations and like favorite parts of the models, right? So I just wondered if you could tell us a bit more of how you pick the collaboration. So you mentioned the SNPs and stuff, but I imagine it could be applied into so many areas. So do you like commit
This is true.
to
So I have applications not only genetics, we have applications in finance. I now collaborate with people in astrophysics, finance astrophysics recently. You see, like I think it's a part is a matter of personality. Okay, so I just like science, and basically I'm always very keen to start to collaborate, learn new things. You see, like this is one thing. Another thing is a huge help from foundations. So my first scholarship was from the Polonium Foundation. I went to University of Washington, where I started to basically work on applied statistics, because statistics in Poland is still very theoretical. So I went into the genetic stuff when I went to Purdue. So at first to University of Washington for 6 months, then like when you meet someone first time, so I got the recommendation letter, then I've been for 18 months at Purdue. And then because I made this quite successful research at Purdue, and also I have some people in Vienna, then I got Fulbright scholarship to go to Stanford. And again, I met many people at Stanford. So again, like talking about foundations. So I've been at Stanford, and I don't know how many of you have been on Fulbright scholarship, but they had great volunteers. So we had like every month we met people. So they took us to the opera, somewhere else. And for example, my current collaboration in astrophysics is a person whom I met during this Fulbright. You see, this is like, I like to talk to people. This is always a problem with younger scientists. PhD students like to concentrate on one topic. So basically when I do collaboration, then each student go to one specific application. Yeah, but definitely I got a great help from Foundation for Polish Science. That was the first scholarship, and then from Fulbright.
Thank you very much. I have a question about models in general. I'm from a field of risk assessment, and I just learned a little bit about modeling in microbiological risk assessment in food and chemical risk assessment. And in their models, a big part of it is uncertainties. They actually really put a lot of emphasis on making sure you include uncertainties into your model, and I have not heard much about that here. Is it also a thing in different fields or not?
No, definitely you have to include uncertainty. So like in this astrophysics stuff, I didn't go much talk about it, but there are like in statistics, we have random effects or random. So you can basically model a given measurement, not necessarily using a number, but using a distribution, okay? Mm-hmm. So you have, so I didn't have much time to talk about it, but yes, definitely this is an issue. If you have like a bias in measurement of, and in everything is, even if you know exactly the predictors, we have to evaluate the uncertainty in prediction, okay? So, sure. So, but there are many techniques currently concerning this.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Małgorzata. Let's give a round of applause one more time. Our third speaker in the session on engineering and mathematical modeling is Sotiris Lambrinidis, and he graduated IT and Cognition here in Copenhagen. He's been a research assistant at CBS, working with natural language processing, and now he works at...
This is what they say in the presentation. take my job.
You'll have to talk about something else then. And now he's at Corti, which is a health tech company. So I'm looking forward to hear about that. I met Sotiris through Amandeep, who established so-called Nerd Night network. So we are nerds where Amandeep makes people present, like myself last time, about, for example, about dangers and benefits of genome sequencing at 3 o'clock in the morning. So yeah, you will hear from him. But yes, Sotiris, the floor is yours.
Thanks. Yeah. So thanks everybody, and the talks have been great. In the bio stuff, which I don't completely get. I think my presentation is more high level. It's more kind of business focused, but maybe there is material for everybody. I'm going to talk a bit about myself and the company, and present you two of our products. So first I'm going to present some market challenges and then some more technical stuff. And then I'm going to leave you with our vision. So who am I? I have also this kind of annoying facts thing in the bottom. This is a classic command in Unix and Linux-based systems to see which username you are logged in as. From Athens, moved to Copenhagen, I live in Norvest. Actually, I studied philosophy of science. It was my bachelor was philosophy of science, but then I kind of changed to this machine learning craze. I've been a researcher at CBS during my studies and a bit after finishing, and then I've been a machine learning engineer at Corti for a bit more over than a year. Some things that I'm doing or I like doing, machine learning of course, AI, natural language processing. I only use Linux and Unix-based systems, you know, and I think if you like your life, you should do classical music. I also listen to other things, but I just do it because it's a bit fancy. So, Corti, the company, founded by Andreas, Lars as CTO, very nice guys, great vision, like them. It's very simple, the premise, that we can use AI to make medics take better and faster decisions. That's all it is. Thank you. No. So the first product, just to get a taste, this is on the EMS, Emergency Medical Services of Copenhagen in Ballerup. And it's sitting right there next to the dispatcher. We're gonna talk a bit about it later. Right now we got a lot of money, that's good. We have a few customers, as I mentioned on Ballerup, the Copenhagen EMS. So if you call now 112, we listen to that and we help them take better decisions, right? SOS Alarm Sweden, the biggest EMS provider in Sweden. I think it's the only EMS provider, which makes it bigger, right? And Seattle Fire Department, we started working with the US because this is the market we want to get into. So yeah, this money, what do we want to do? Anyway, the market. As you saw the product, it looks good, right? That's very weird, you know, like the company just have a prototype that's ugly and stuff like that. But, you know, look at the dispatchers there, you know, they have so many stuff, so many programs, 3 screens, probably running Windows. It's a nightmare, you know. So, of course, they are very resistant towards changes. They like things that work, and you're going to have a hard time getting them to use your product. This, you know, this from science, I guess, stuff. But, of course, you need to publish if you want to sell a health product. And privacy is a problem, was a problem. I mean, in general, people are moving to the cloud, so that's not a problem in 2021, if you ask me. So what does this do? This listens to the call, so it has a little GPU, so it does machine learning inside and transcribes the voice to text, and then we run some models to get out of hospital cardiac arrest detections. So the dispatcher gets a pop-up about out-of-hospital cardiac arrests. That's when somebody has a cardiac arrest, a heart attack, as we call it, out of the hospital. Why this is important? That's very time critical. So every minute that passes without CPR, basically, or without further intervention, your chances of surviving decrease like by 10%. Telecommunicators, of course, there are people that make mistakes. So can a machine learning framework help them take better decisions? Yes. This receiver operating characteristic curve, you know, like you have the true positives here. So if it says it's true, it is true. And, you know, if it says it's true, but it's not actually. So we see that we are a lot better than the actual people. We have a bit more false positives. I think actually that's tuned, so you adjust the boundary so you have a specific number of false positives. So that was really good. That kind of proved our product. But yeah, that's not enough. You have to package it in a thing looking like a Danish design in order for them to get it. I mean, they're not using it, you know, this is just for a month or something, you know, and of course, you just connect it to the cloud. Now, a bit on the more technical side, I guess you don't have a lot of experience with that. So emergency medical calls, their phone quality, 8,000 hertz. It's like really shitty, as one would say. And of course, everybody has their own system, ancient systems that they take the calls, different channels, some of them are mono. So it's a help to get this right. Of course, ASR is the, I removed the facts. ASR, it's a automatic speech recognition, speech to text, NLP is natural language processing. So that things are still hard. It's what you call AI hard. It's a really nice term because it implies that in order to solve this problem, so in order to make a model that is as good as humans are into understanding language, you have to make it general AI. There's no other way that you can have this. So it's really tricky stuff. And of course, you cannot take a lifetime. As Enrico said before, you know, in 2 years you can get your wallet empty, so you need to move fast. So now we're coming to our second product that we're offering. Because imagine that these dispatch centers have thousands of calls every day. And how can you know who did a good job, who didn't? Minor details have major impact. They follow very specific protocols, questions that they should ask. And what they're doing right now is that some people are going, they're sampling some calls, and they're saying, okay, was this dispatcher good, but you could improve. So what we offer them is, we call it court insights, right? So we take the audio of the calls, past calls, we analyze it and we detect when they ask specific questions and what answers they got. And based on that, that's technical stuff. And based on that, we give an overall score. So you can know where your team is strong, or which shifts you're not doing so good, or which dispatcher you should train, I guess. And I put this here just to see that, you know, software sucks. You have so many components, so many stuff. But I guess this is how we solved it, because so as long as this can get the audio from the EMS, then what I'm doing here, I don't really care, and I can deploy a quick model. Now maybe to the most interesting part. Well, everybody can do that, you know, Google does it, Microsoft Azure, they do it, Amazon Web Service, you know, you can get text, you can get anything you want. What are we doing here? So, as Agnieszka asked, actually it's very difficult to know what you don't know. We have an example of a call that was a totally irrelevant call with AMS. I think, you know, it was just a wrongful call, something like that. And they got a cardiac arrest detection because the model had never seen a call like that. So it's really difficult. And we're working with these latent variable models, which instead of predicting whatever you need to predict, let's say it's a cardiac arrest, you try to generate samples from this distribution. So you kind of learn on a basic level what it is. before predicting stuff. And then you use this to say, okay, this is something that I really don't know, I cannot give you an answer to that. Of course, the medical consultation, people are stressed, they're in a hurry, so a lot of times they're not grammatically correct. And a lot of times we use text-to-speech, so we just get the text, but a lot of times the voice or other audible clues can actually play a part in our decision. So we try combining also the audio with the text. And also, of course, trying to make the automatic speech recognition models better. And another also very hot topic, this unsupervised thing. So how can you learn when you don't have data? So for example, now in order to transcribe, in order to make a model that listens and gets the text, you need to have thousands of hours of calls, which means that some human need to be there and actually say, okay, yeah, they said this. So we're also looking at ways to represent them, learn the representation without any labels. I think that's it, but I have a lot of time for questions, and I think we're going to have a few. Hope.
Thank you very much. I surely hope so. This is very interesting. Let's go. Let's have a discussion. Okay.
Nice.
Yes, Krzysztof.
So you said that those, of course, those are stressful situations, and a lot of people have, they don't use proper grammar. And so, how would you technically approach it? Because you need to get the information out. So do you look just for the keywords? Do you look for what's the technical thing behind it?
Yeah, that's a very interesting question. This is what Lars, the CTO, says in his presentation. And he makes the analogy with self-driving cars. Now you drive your own car. Then some people have the lane assist or cruise control, another level. Then we have companies like Tesla, which claim some kind of self-driving. Then we have the other company, this Google one, I don't remember this, that they actually made the car work in Portland, but nowhere else. So it's kind of the stages. Yeah, of course, I guess 20 years ago you would say, okay, yeah, I don't feel good, or something like that. But now all these models are like, deep models, so we use deep learning. So just stuff a lot of data into that, and that's the right thing. Yeah, so you let the model kind of decide.
Yes. Can we have a question here, please?
Kind of related to that, but a little bit different. How do you account, especially in a city like Copenhagen, where I can only imagine how many different accents people use when they go? And how do you account for this? You kind of answered this, that the model should somehow sort it out. But how do you account for the possibility of a lot of errors that come from the fact that the model created some kind of a bad image of what a standard Copenhagen accent is, and things deviate from it in the model's opinion, so to speak?
Yeah, that's $1 million question. You don't. I mean, I guess it has to do with also the dimensionality, because we have a lot of samples. So I guess the model can infer what is wrong and what is right. But we had, to give you an example, we had this problem that we tried to deploy the model trained on Copenhagen to North Jylland, and it didn't work at all good. They were not really satisfied. Yeah, because, not in pronunciation, because this is the ASR, so the ASR just gives you the text. But textually, they communicate with different expressions. So yeah, you need to account for that. You need to train a model for even different regions.
We had a question here.
Yeah, thank you very much. I'm just curious because you mentioned that you got a lot of money, like $27 million, and it is not biomedical research, let's say. So I'm just curious, where is the majority of money is kind of put on? Is it on the data acquisition or the data analysis? Or
that's a
anything,
very
something
good
else?
question. I really don't know. But now also we got Horizon also, and in collaboration with a lot of countries for this thing, for kind of evaluating what confidence we should have on AI solutions in medical care, something like that. I'm not sure how to phrase it. Yeah, but it's about medical care and algorithms.
Just a word of explanation to non-life science people, Horizon application is the biggest, I think, funding you can get in European Union. It's huge. Everybody wants it.
Yeah, it's good. It focuses on innovation and kind of that stuff.
Thanks for your talk. It was super interesting. I have a question. Keeping in mind that this morning, for example, we had from Julie when she was talking about like the recognition of medical images and how, especially more junior doctors, they would like doubt themselves because the software would recognize something as a lesion and they wouldn't, or the other way around, and they would like fall back on the software even though they were right. So I just wondered of the human aspect, because you also mentioned that some of the, not the callers, but the receivers, I guess, the dispatchers, they had like seen like really low scores, below 3 when the team score was 8.5. I don't know if that was just an example. So how do you deal with that, and do you see that, like, are people receptive then to seeing actually you really crap at your job, or how do you, I don't know.
Yeah, that's also a good question. I guess it has to do a bit with accountability. So maybe how accountable we are for our actions. First of all, I don't know if you know it, but the Danish government officially, I don't know if the government, but some Danish, the Danish state has an official approach on AI. And they say that we are going to use it supportively, but we don't plan it to replace any human labor, just use supportive to humans. That's the official Danish state way they're saying it. So we're saying exactly the same. So it just imagine as a friend nudging you, like, think again, is it a cardiac arrest? So we don't plan to say you get an alert and follow this. Yeah, so it's just there as a, like if you make the car parallelism, you could say that when you go off lane, it's just a vibration in the wheel to nudge you in the right way, right now to this moment, until we have general artificial intelligence.
Thank you. How many people working for the company at the moment?
Maybe around 100, 120. Yeah, and we have a lot of people in the US also.
Okay. Anyone else?
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks.
Let me get the final talk of today. So our final speaker of this session and the final speaker of today, Amandeep Nira. He works as a principal consultant at BEC Denmark, consultancy firm, and has been active in fintech at Nordics, very active. He actually conducted a great panel at the Tech Barbecue last week, which is like a big fair for everything new in technology and startups. And he worked as a CTO earlier, and yeah, very much involved in everything technology and nerd related. And yes, a founder of a really, really great network of so-called Nerd Night in Copenhagen that I'm happy to be a part of for quite some time now, where people from a variety of fields meet at evening and night, present, used to drink a few shots, and have sometimes very heated discussions on a variety of subjects. So it's really fun. The man can convince almost anybody to do almost anything for him. But that said, I somehow managed to convince him to come here straight from the airport after his trip to Italy and give a final presentation on upscaling. So this is very relevant to all of us. Welcome and thanks for making it on time.
Thanks. Thanks for the nice introduction, and I would love to be invited to academics because I represent the corporate side. I work with BEC as a principal IT consultant, mostly advising the workforce on what next skills they should pick up and how they can cope up with the change coming. It's a bit of a change management, a bit of a learning the actual technology, because essentially what we have stopped doing in corporate world is we have stopped learning. Learning is a word which is like synonymous with the academic institute, but not with the life which is around me. Having said that, yeah, so we come to this talk about upskilling. So this statement came from Elon Musk in 2018, that they relied too much on robots to build Model 3, and something didn't work out. It got delayed. Sure, happens. Those who are in actual coding, working, they know that things happen like that. But the interesting part is, not to offend anyone, the people with no background in IT, automation, robotics, they, from the sociological point of view, like a lot of heated discussions started off, probably what some of you would have read that. What would happen when robots come? Robots should be dependent upon or not. France, of course, France, right? And so they even went and proposed a taxation model for robots after all this. But for us to study around this 2018, they say like there are certain jobs which are getting eliminated. There is, yes, 29% jobs getting eliminated with automation in the next 10 years. But there is a new job creation of 13% new job creations as well. And this comes in kind of a cycle of changes. Now, to account for this 16% variable, truth be told, or might sound harsh, it could be like, what would the existing workforce do? Either they learn something better to do, new to do, which can be open up for them, or yeah, maybe shrink working hours, maybe 4 hours, maybe 4 days a week, could be. Capgemini research, why automation? It's just an overall broad sense, and most of the data is related to US. Yeah, 43% to improve quality, 23% for the incremental revenue, and the most important, which I find here, is 36%, which is also to increase customer satisfaction. So we cannot deny the basic fact that automation, in some way or form, is an ongoing thing, and whether Danish or any other state government has a policy or not, our work is continuously getting impacted due to that. Also, the two keywords which kind of appear here is, in order to leverage from automation, the organization which can leverage it better are the ones who rotate their employees to actually upskill themselves. To define upskilling, dictionary definitions, too much filled on the slide, so I won't spend too much time. So basically, it's to learn a new skill or to focus on yourself on some high-value task, which kind of you got free time because of the automation around you. And if we take an example around, yeah, again, US statistics here. This actually takes care of 4.4 hours, which is basically, it says a 40-hour work week. 4.4 hours is 11%. So I think anybody in tech field right now, let's say only tech field for now, would agree that 11% of their tasks currently, they are very mundane and they can be automated. They don't need to be manually involved in that. So it's a very conservative number of 4.4 hours taken here. Of an organization of size 20,000, investing in upskilling program, which is basically, if an employee on an average has got 4.4 hours free every week, where that time should be spent for his or her time. If it is properly utilized and upskilling that individual, there's a considerable saving of plus 276 million for a 20,000 size organization. ILO, again, 2019, same time I'm talking about, just before Corona, this development, so might sound okay. ILO in 2019, the sanitary declaration, they came up with something which was never before, that each organization, government, employer organization, to establish a lifelong learning system. So learning and development department is an essential from a local commune to a high-tech company, a learning and development department. A few examples, Amazon, which initiated in 2019, and these are their programs, Amazon Technical Academy, Associated Test. So basically taking your warehouse workers to learn programming, the programmers who are already there, they can utilize learning AI and machine learning, and their machine learning university are all kind of helping employees to build better skills. Orange, French telecom, they pledged some amount. Microsoft made announcements, but never disclosed the numbers. Yeah, but it's not as simple as it sounds. To be an expert, the number it's not like metrics. Most of you have seen that you just get a program and now you know the skill. Now you know how to ride a cycle or fly a helicopter. So it's like a 10,000 hours, which are actually required for you to be expert. And where does they come from? Who will fund those 10,000 hours to make you an expert? And large organizations, yes, initiatives as I mentioned, they can sponsor it. But what about the small and medium organizations? Who's going to fund these hours? So, skill councils, the talks have begun, and making reskilling available to everyone. Maybe e-learning subscriptions or other methods of training should be integral part of everyday work. Should big governments' interventions be there to mandate everyone to pick and learn new skill every day? Yes, of course you have this job, you manage people maybe, or you deliver your individual deliverables every day, every week. But what have you learned new this month or this week? Maybe this is also a kind of a expectation set in every employment or every basically business relation. Again, as I said, large corps is an easier thing to do for them. Smaller businesses, they require more of a governmental support or societal support or academic support. Insurers, bankers, impact investors, of course, they could also play a part. Yeah, so right now, what we are also seeing is people are looking for jobs at the same time. Companies are also looking for skilled workers. It's not like picking people from like a factory floor and just putting them in front of a new machine and they will be productive. So there's a considerable time which goes in upskilling any individual. And since the shape of work and expectation requirement of a job skill is ever changing, there is some innovative and ambitious approach required towards every organization to put time in upskilling. And a learning culture, not just as I would say, in an organization, but overall as a society. Yeah, that's my talk.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Anyone has questions? Amandeep. So Amandeep, what? Oh yeah, there's one square.
So you said that, like, as you noticed yourself and you pretty much try to address it maybe a bit, there is this 16% gap in the jobs loss between job creation and, of course, upskilling some part of the people who lose the jobs is maybe going to put them back in the jobs, but at the same time, like, definitely it's not going to be 16%, it's going to be put back.
Yeah.
So what do you think would be the solution for, like it will have huge impact on society and economy?
Well, that is a significant impact. I completely agree. And I was actually looking for one more chart, which was in maybe in a separate slide, which is about population to employment ratio, which is probably not covered here. Just in addition to that, the population, one another thing comes with automation is the wage rate also goes down, which is not addressed here, which is another version of the slides actually have. So there's a 0.1% wage reduction for every 1,000 robots created for a job every year. Whether now the societal solution could be like you have limited working hours, either you cut down your working hours, or you invest yourself and try to strive for that 13% new jobs getting created.
Yeah, but me getting, for example, being in the 13% of getting jobs, it doesn't solve the problem that is going to put on the country.
There is a problem, yeah, I completely agree. Yeah, there is a problem, and there is no solution to which I can kind of comprehend right now. But this is a kind of preparing ourselves and people around, like this is something inevitable.
So maybe what Danish government is doing is actually preventing it, because as they said, it will not substitute people. It will be, if anything, an aid or service to people already in the workforce.
I cannot make any further statements on that, but essentially, if you take a simple example of if you're in a software company, like the people who do software testing, and you deploy a culture of automation tests, and see how many people free up around you. Like I'm not saying fire them. I'm saying like they could be doing something else. They could be maintaining an overall delivery infrastructure of the product, but they need not to sit down and test the same thing again and again, which a kind of a script can do it now.
We have time. We have time for many questions.
You had another slide question for it. Yeah.
Thank you. So I'm just wondering, since you say that in the case of the testing that people will have just more time to do anything else, so like why don't you just give them this time, or maybe limit the working hours?
Yeah.
And like, how do you feel what you presented about like this increasing the growth and increasing the automation and increasing the upskilling? Like, how will it fit into the world's challenges that we have right now, for example, that are related to with the climate change? Like,
Okay, the last part, the climate change part, like I'm not an expert to answer anything on that, but from an overall point, I can say that, may I ask what profession, what job are you into?
yes, I also come from the IT industry background,
Okay.
and now I'm in academia.
Yeah, okay, I understand. Yeah, so my kind of a proposal here was like, if this, for example, whichever job you are in, and you realize, and your employer also realizes that 10% of your time is now taken care by a script. or an automation or a robot. Like we're not talking about a hardware robot, it's software itself as well. So where would you like to put your 10%? Learning and development of yourself for some other high value task, some more complex work, or maybe you want to shrink your contract?
Well, maybe I just want to keep my contract the way that it is right now with the same money, but maybe with less hours.
Yeah, so yeah, that's like you shrink your working hours. Yeah? So, but this is very conservative, 10%. And like any IT tech job, like the number is actually it's not just 11%. It's like much more, especially in Denmark.
Less and less plausible that there are, in principle, there are things that will never be automated. So it seems to me that the solution you are presenting is a sort of a short-term solution. We upskill ourselves,
yes.
Then machines pick up, we have to upskill ourselves again.
Yes.
At the end of the day, maybe it's just easier to, I don't know, get the value of production from automated processes and just start giving people money for free.
Actually, a very valid point. I was asked this question once before at that nerd night. Like, yeah. So, what is your view on universal basic income if everything is automated? Again, I'm not an expert on like how societies should be designed, but ILO, specifically the Sanitary Declaration, and this first time they mentioned like because the inherent nature of every job changes over time. So anybody who's employed as part of that job is expected to kind of let go some parts which can be automated and put himself or herself in a more value creation. So that's a kind of like a micro level answer, but on a macro basis, as she also pointed, instead of cutting my hours or putting me into some other upskilling program, just what to do with that 4.4 hours. Maybe you're already getting overpaid. Yeah.
Anybody else? Oh, so let's say what will be skills or abilities, human abilities in high demand in 20, 30 years' time?
Well, again, that's not my current expertise area. You can follow those Gartner hype curve for that, I will say that. Those are like multiple fields listed which are going to be in demand, and there's certain kind of a hype curve which reflects what jobs are going to be created. But yeah, pointing out things, as you also said, like there are some things you for sure know that it cannot be automated. So more complex problems, more high value tasks. I can give an example for legal tech perspective. Yes, you need to have a lawyer, a professional draft, but now there are some companies which have kind of brought that cost to like maybe 1/10 of the level of original hiring a lawyer. How is that changing? So how is a law firm then adopting to? This is a kind of a live example. Like maybe they are kind of investing themselves in a different field altogether. I mean, maybe they're focusing, not taking more time with the regular housing contracts. Just giving an example, but with the contracts which require more of the new regulations to come. So basically, focusing yourself to what is more higher value, then keep doing which can be automated. Sorry, the example was on the legal tech, which is...
It's okay,
yeah.
it's fine.
And
we are here to learn many different things, not only our own. Thank you very much. Is that all? Yes. Thank you, Amandeep. So that was our last speaker. Does Polonium Foundation have anything extra to say to the participants? No? I guess we are all, as organizers, very grateful for your participation. It's fantastic, both the speakers and the participants, that you came, you shared what you know, and yes, we were all here to learn and to make contacts. And please do join us for the social event tonight, so we can talk even more. And you are more than welcome to bring a friend, a partner, or colleague that you think would have fun tonight. And yes, see you in a bit. Yes, there is something.
I did think of one thing. Initially I just wanted to say thank you, but I realized because of the tech issues earlier, I got stressed and I forgot to mention. And I noticed there is a lot of kind of talk about wondering maybe, you know, the different choices and collaborations and the future and stuff. So one little thing I did not mention is that one of our new initiatives will be, it's called Career Cafe, which will be people basically getting together and talking about their career options, not maybe like a mentoring scheme, but just exchanging ideas and almost like a knowledge exchange. But it's like peer mentoring. So yeah, if you follow us on social media or subscribe to our newsletter, you'll find out more about that. Thank you, and thanks again for coming.
Thank you very much. That is it. No, that's all, folks. Oh, I always wanted to say. Oh, of course. You see, it is many hours. All the speakers, please come to me again. I have gifts for you.
From the last panel, or?
It's not an option. Come. The last session first, and then whoever is, and then we take it. All the speakers, yes. But all
more.
Yes, Amandeep. Let's have a picture with whoever presented today, please.
Oh, nice.
Let's go. Yes, of course. This is a happy place. Excuse me? Yes. Well, they're lost. Kasia.